We're up to Daf Ches Amid Beis, and the Gemara says, Kitanya he b'birkas hamazon, kikom Rav Yochanan b'shura. When Rav Yochanan said on Daf Ches Amid Aleph that ein avel min aminyan, he was talking about the shura, which is the line of people single file that pass by the oval to be menachemim after the kvura in the Beis HaKvaros, and the oval is not part of the minyan of a shura, and ein shura pachos mi asara. However, with regard to Birkas Hamazon, the Avil is chayv in all mitzvahs, and therefore he's part of the Zimun. He's counted in for the Zimun, whether it's a Zimun of 3, whether it's a Zimun of 10. The Ella, the Gemara has a cash on this answer. According to you, that Rabbi Yochanan is talking about a shura, Hadi Omar Rabbi Yitzchak Omar Rabbi Yochanan, the name Rabbi Yochanan, Mevarchin Birchas Chasanim Basara, B'chasanim in a minyan, Ubirchas Avelu Basara, the ein avelu min aminyan is bracha b'shura mi'ika. Are you telling me that when Rabbi Yochanan said ein avelu min aminyan, he was referring to the shura? Here it says ein avelu min aminyan, referring to the bracha, and there's no bracha during the shura. Ella says the Gemara kikom Rabbi Yochanan be'rechava. In other words, when Rabbi Yochanan made the statement that the Avelim are not integrated into the minyan, that's the Birchas Avelim in the Rechava, which is after Kvura. And they used to have that first Suda, which is called the Sudas Havra, after the Kvura. And in those days, they did a Brachov Ha'ir in public. And there they recited the Brachos of the Avelim. And once again, you needed a minyan for that. And the Avel says Rabbi Yochanan is not part of the minyan. So the Gemara says, V'ela, according to your interpretation, that Rabbi Yochanan is talking about Birchas Rechava, Barchava, Hadi Omar, Rabbi Yitzchak Omar, Rabbi Yochanan. Again, back to the same statement. Baruch Birchas Chada B'Asara Kol Shiva. Birchas Sanim Min Aminyan, Birchas Avel B'Asara Kol Shiva. Ein Avel Min Aminyan. This cannot be referring to Birchas Harachava, because it says Kol Shiva. Birchas Rechava Kol Shiva Mi'ika. Birchas Rechava is only on that first day, right after the Kvura. And the Gemara says Mishkachas La B'Panim Chadoshos, that there is such an entity as Birchas Rechava all 7 days. If there are new Menachamim that weren't there yesterday, they're Panim Chadoshos, and they generate a chiyuv of Birchas Ha'avel from the get-go. Ki Yehad Rav Chia Bar Abba. Again, we have two possibilities, whether Rav Chia Bar Abba taught Reish Lakish's son Mikra, that's called Makre B'nei to Reish Lakish. Mikre means Mikra. According to another text, Masne Breder of Reish Lakish. He taught the son of Reish Lakish, meaning not that he read Mikra with him, but rather he taught him Torah Shval Pei, he taught him Mishnah. In any event, Tavi Shochivle Yenuka, the child, the son, young child of Reb Chia Bar Abba died. Yom Kama, on the first day after his death, Lo Azal Gabe, Reish Lakish did not come to be Menachem. Lo Mochar, on the second day of the Avelus, Davre Yehuda Bar Nachmeni Miturgame. Reish Lakish took along with him, to accompany him, a fellow named Yehuda Bar Nachmeni, and he was a Miturgaman, his own Miturgaman. Reish Lakish, his own private Miturgaman, used to review the shir out loud and project the voice. Amalei, Reish Lakish says to Yehuda Bar Nachmeni, Kum Ema Milsa, come now and say words of Tanchumim, Kol Kavel Yenuka, about this terrible tragedy, this catastrophe of the death of the child. So Yehuda Bar Nachmeni opens up the Omar and he quotes a pasuk at the end of the Chumash in Dvarim Lamed Beis, Vayar Hashem vayinatz mikas banov ubenosov. What do we learn from this pasuk? Dar she'avos minatzim lakadosh baruch hu ois al b'neiim al b'noseiim u'meisim kshem ketanim. So Vayar Hashem es cheta avos, So because of the sin of the fathers who angered the Almighty, he would have to punish the father by taking the lives of the children. Others have a different version of the story. It wasn't a child that died, but Bachur, a young man that died. And this is what Yehuda bar Nachmani darshaned in the presence of Rabbi Chia the father, based on a pasuk Yeshayahu Perek Tes, Al Kain, Al Bachurav, Lo Yismach Hashem, El Yomit Aleim Tsaros Zeros. So we're talking about Bachurim now. Ves Yisomov, Ves Almenosov, Lo Yirache. Why Kikulo Chanaf Umeira? There was Chanifa for Rishoyim. They flattered the evildoers, Umeira, and they did Rasha themselves, which themselves called Peh. Dover Navola, they spoke Divrei Znus. Becholzos, despite the punishment, they did not do tshuva, lo shav apo. And therefore the divine wrath, was still raging and active, did not calm down. The Od, Yodo Netuya, God will stretch out his arm to bring more punishment. My Vyod Yodo Netuya, Rab Hanan, Barav, Hakol Yodim, Kal Lom, Nichnas al Chupa, Kol Avanabel Pivu Motzi, Varnavolam Piv, Afilu, Nechtam Lo Gzardin Shel Shivim Shana, L'Tova, Nefach Olav L'Ra. So when it says Kol Peh, Dover Nevola in the pasuk, the punishment for that will be the Od Yodo Netuya, and with darshaning the Od as if it said Olam Voed, and Yodo Shal Kadosh Baruch is Netuya, is stretched out. La focus Kol Olamo Shal Odom Mitov L'Ra. So the Gemara asks about this Yehuda bar Nachmani, the Meturgamon of Reish Lakish. Asol and Achume Tziyuri Kamitzarle. He came to console Rab Chia, and instead, from his words, he obviously brought tremendous anguish to Rab Chia, that it was the terrible sins that caused the death of his son. The Gemara says, Hachi Kamalei. This is what Yehuda bar Nachmani said to Reish Lakish. Afal pisha ata lo chatosa. Nevertheless, Meis bin Chabavon Hadar, your son died because of the sins of the generation. And what's the essence, the substance of the Nechama? Chashiv atlet fosei adara. You are considered chashiv up in Shamayim, and therefore you and your children are nitfas b'avon adar. It's an amazing concept here that really has to be studied. And it's a Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Gimel Amid Beis, that if there are tzaddikim in a generation, tzaddikim nitfasim b'avon hadar. And it's based on a pasuk in Yechezkel Perek Tes, u'mikdashai tachelu. Al tikri mikdashai el mikudashai. El b'nei odom shekimu es hator kula me aleph v'yad tov. U'betama dover shatzadikim nitfasim be'avon hadar. Pirish marshosh ahoylem limchos keneged over avera. However, the Maharal Prague interprets it that the tzaddik is choshev k'mo kol adar kulo. Umemela misasa mechaperes al kol adar. Shekasher nenash ikar adar dover zeu kaparasa. Great kapara, and we say misat tzaddikim mechaperes for the entire generation. Omal Reish Lakish says to you the very loy kum ema milsa keneged shivcho shel HaKadosh Baruch. Say something that would enhance our praise for the Almighty. And from now on, we have the nusach of the Birchas Avelu. And from the fact that Yehuda bar Nachmani recited these brachas on the second day of Avelus, the Gemara is going to prove that this bracha is going to be recited not only on the first day of Avelus, but even on the second day of Avelus, if they're upon him chadoshis. Pasach v'yoma, the first bracha of Birchas Avelu. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Oel hagadol berov godlo, adir v'chazak berov noraos. What are his noraos? Mechaye mesim v'mamoro, ose gedolos arim cheker, v'niflos arim mispar. Baruch atah Hashem mechaye ha-mesim. Amalei Reish Lakish says Yehuda bar Nachmani kum ema milsa keneged Avelu. Give us something for the Avelu. Pasach v'yomer, a second bracha from the series called Birchas Avelu. Achenu hamiyugoim hamidukaim v'evel hazeh tnu levavchem lachkor ezos. Zos hi omedes la'ad. In other words, contemplate death. Everybody's going to die. Nosiv hu misheshes mebreshis. This is the derech ha'olam from the 6 days of creation, and therefore al tivku yoser midai. Rabim shasu, rabim yishtu. Many died, and many will die. Kim mishtei rishonim, kach mishtei achronim. Just like the rishonim died, so to the achronim will die. Achenu bal nechamos. The Avelim, who are our brothers, Yenachem Eschem, the Baal Nechamos, which is none other than the Almighty, will console you. Baruch atah Hashem Menachem Avelu. Omer Abai Rabim Shasu. Abai tries to analyze the nusach of the bracha. Rabim Shasu, Lema Rabim Yishtu. Rabim Shasu Lema, but Rabim Yishtu Lo Lema. Mishte Rishonim Lema. Mishte Achronim Lo Lema. Why? Yomi Shimba Lakish, Ein Tana Michmei de Rabbi Yossi, Li Olav al Yiftach Adam Pelis Satan. You should not mention the inyan of Misas HaChaim, the death of those who are still alive. And I'll prove it to you. Amar Rav Yosef Ma'ikra. From which pasuk do we derive the conclusion of Al Yiftach Adam Pivlis Satan? Shenemer, it says in Yeshayahu Navi, Lule Hashem Tzvakos Shebarachmav Hosir Lanu Sarid Kimat Kistom Hayinu Lamora Diminu. If not for the Rachmi Hashem, it almost reached the point where our Goral, our destiny, is like the Goral of Anshe Stom V'Amora that were completely wiped off of the earth. Maya Hadule, what was the response from the Midas Hadin? Shimu Dvar Hashem K'tzine Stom. K'tzine Stom means Sarim Shemasem Kistom. Hazinu Toras Elokeinu Amamora. A nation that's actions, behaviors like Amora. And the Navi continues there with the Nevuah of the Churban, the Onesh. So once he mentions the Navi, that Re'uyim Heim L'Kilayim Kistom V'Amora, that awakens the Midas Hadin on them, and therefore Al Yiftach Pel Sat. Omer Leish Lakish says to you by Nachmani, Kume Memilsa Keneged Menachme Avelu. What can you say in praise of Hashem who sends Menachamim, those who will console the bereaved? Pasuk V'Yomar, third bracha of Birchas Avelu. Achenu Gomlei Chasadim B'nei Gomlei Chasadim Achzikim B'Briso Shel Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was dedicated to the midah of Chesed. And the pasuk says, "Ki adativ l'man asher yitzav espodav besbeiso akav v'shamu derlasot staku mishpat." So his midah is midas hachesed. Achenu hamenachamim bal agmul yishalim lechem gmulchem. You will be rewarded for your efforts. Baruch atah Hashem mishalem hagmul. Amalei Reish Lakish said to you the Bariloi kum ema milsa keneged kol Yisrael. Now we get to the fourth bracha, which is a tefillah for Kol Yisrael. Pasach v'yomar, Ribono Olamim, Pidei Vatzel Maleit Hoshea, Amcho Yisrael, Min HaDever, Min HaCherev, Min HaBiza, which is Shevi, Umin HaShidofon, Min HaYirokon, Umikol Minei Peronios, on the strikes of Olam, Terem Nikra Vatasana, Baruch Atah Hashem Otzer Hamagifa. And this is the end of the Seder called Birchas HaVelim, that's comprised of 4 different brachos. Amar Ula, Ve'i Tema, Ve'i Amrile, V'Maslisa Tono, the Seder was in a Vraisa, Asara Kosos, Shel Yayin Tiknu Chachamim, that they should drink the base ha'avel, 10 kosos of yain. They should be married b'shtia, as the pasuk says in Mishlei Lamed Aleph, Tnu sheichar le'oved v'yayin l'mari nefesh, shlosha kodem achila, 3 cups they drank before the meal, they liftach as b'nei meal, to induce the appetite. Shlosha b'socha achila, and another 3 during the course of the meal, and that helps the food go down to be digested. The arba li achar achila, and 4 kosos after the achila. And he drinks them al seder arba brachot shebebirkas hamazon. On each one of the 4 brachos of birkas hamazon, he drinks another kos. And after that kos, they pour another kos, etc., etc. The 4 brachos of birkas hamazon. Echad keneged azon, v'echad keneged birchas haaretz, v'echad keneged vona Yerushalayim, v'echad keneged hatova ameita. Osifa aleim, they added to these 10 kosos another arba kosos. We're up to 14 kosos. Echad keneged chazonei ha'ir, a separate bracha was established that corresponds to the chazonei ha'ir, who are oskim b'tzorchei tzibur b'krus hames. And this bracha is recited on a kos yain. The echad keneged parnosei ha'ir, those are the rich people who give of their funds for the burial of the dead. The echad keneged beis hamikdash, they were mesaken on the beis hamikdash a birchas nichumim, she'enachamenu hamakom b'binyono. The echad keneged Ram Gamliel. Gemara is going to explain that. Evan sheschilu, they started drinking the 14 cups of yayin. Hayushosim umishtakrim. They started getting drunk, and the Chacham became aware of that. Ichziru adabel yochna, and they reverted back to the original takana of 10 kosos. Why they won't get drunk on 10 kosos, yain, I don't know. He says that although Rashi says they went down to 10, most Rishonim say that bitlu legamre minag shtias yod kosa. As we said before, you can get pretty drunk on 10 cups of wine. What does it mean that they drank a kos keneged Rav Gamliel? The Sanya, Gemara clarifies this. Rishon, I say hotzoas hames. Kosher lekrov of Yosef misosa. Now, this has to do with financial expenditures for the burial, and that's going to embarrass the aniyim who cannot afford them. So the minhag was to spend a lot of money on tachriche. Achahayu menichem oso uborchem. Till it got to the point where the poor people who could not afford to buy these beautiful, expensive tachrichim would leave the dead and run away. Achabar Gamliel v'nog kalus bi atzmo. He commanded before his death that they should not wrap them up in expensive tachrichim, ve'otzi'u mikli pishtan, and they produced tachrichim from simple linen clothes, b'nogu kolam achra lahotzi b'klei pishtan. Everybody followed the leader, in this case, Rabbi Gamliel. Omar Pafava idnenog alma filu b'sardo barazuza. The minig is to bury the dead even in a beggar that's made of canvas. It's not worth more than one zuz. And now we're up to the sugya of Omar Rabbi Loza. This is perhaps the most famous sugya in the entire Masechta. We'll just mention quickly an introduction to the sugya. Back in the day, when a person was Mekadesh and Isha, the Kesef or Beshtar, in the presence of two Edim, and she would remain in her father's house until the Nesuin, which is she's called an Arusa, and then he's Konis HaLuchlupa, takes her into his house. She becomes Ishto L'chol Dover, and she's called the Nesuin. Now, during the 12-month period between Erisin and Nesuin, her status is that of an Ashes Ish. She's not allowed to get married to anyone else, of course, unless her husband dies or gives her a get. And if she has nus during this period of time, willingly, then two things happen. And one, she's asura leboel and lebal, and she's chayev skila. Now, a basula who has never had a relationship and intimacy with a man, she has two simonim like that prove that she's a basula. Number one, on the occasion of the first bia, the bia rishona, she has dam besulin. And number two, he can feel a dochak during the intimacy because it's Pesach no. Now, if a man marries a woman and her chazaka is, and he assumes that she's a basula, and her ksuba is therefore masayim zuz, and therefore when he has a relationship with her, and he didn't find it to be a basula, then under certain circumstances, he could be mafsid or the ksuba, and that's exactly what Rabbi Loza says here on the top of that Tesam and Aleph, Omer Pesach Patzuach Matzasi, Nemon Li Osra Ola. So that's a bit where we'll pick it up tomorrow. And I wish you a great day.